Hi everyone and welcome to our new Houzz webinar. My name is Vanessa Walker and I'm the editor of Houzz in Australia and New Zealand. As trade shows return in person, we look at some of the biggest trends coming out of European design this autumn. Our roundup of common trends from the autumn European fair schedule starts with possibly the biggest and for many the most exciting of them all, the return of physical in-person fairs. Many of Europe's iconic trade events were held in person for the first time in 18 months, and the excitement among professionals and design enthusiasts was palpable. In today's webinar, we cover the following topics: sustainability, textures and forms, and colours. Of course, the seismic shocks of the pandemic continue to be felt. First, the fairs were different this year. The Salone del Mobile organisers, for example, took hygiene measures as a creative opportunity. At this edition, all exhibitors were given a standard display space, which helped move traffic along, while it also levelled the playing field. Major brands and small studios had to work equally hard to set themselves apart from the crowd. To mark this new beginning, the fair was renamed Super Salone. The major trends at this year's European fairs can be seen as stemming from two impulses, driven by our recent experiences. On one hand, a hyper-awareness of the environmental crisis, and on the other, a renewed delight in the comforts of home. Sustainability was the strongest theme to emerge from the European fairs. While greenwashing, or being eco-friendly for the sake of publicity, is always a potential criticism of sustainability within brands, we loved how designers looked at the topic from so many different angles. There were products made out of recycled or recyclable materials. Pictured here is a prototype for the Ocean Chair by Zuva, exhibited at Maison et Objet. The chair is made of recycled ocean plastic on a 100% recyclable metal frame. A number of recycled and otherwise more sustainable materials were also debuted at Super Salone. And according to the organisers, the fair itself is sustainable, with the show stands made of 100% recycled wood, which will be returned to the production cycle to prevent the emission of over half a tonne of CO2. Within circularity, it was still a radical idea a few years ago. Fairs all over Europe this time were engaging with the concept of circularity strongly. At an online trend preview for next year's Heim Textile Fair, that's in January 2022 in Frankfurt, Carolyn Till of UK creative studio Franklin Till presented two approaches to producing without creating waste in the production process. Quote, to either retain naturally derived materials within the biological cycle and let them degrade, or utilise only synthetic materials that can be retained wholly in the technical cycle within infinite loops. At the London Design Festival in September, circularity was a focus of a panel discussion as well as designing for circularity exhibit, where 12 Danish furniture designers showcased approaches to keeping materials in use. At 3 days of design in September in Denmark, Bang & Olufsen displayed an item designed to prolong the life of its products, and that was a kit to upgrade 1970s turntables. Likewise, furniture manufacturer Skagerup also continued its Re-Classic initiative, in which it buys back, restores and resells its products. Throughout the pandemic, we've seen a huge increase in demand for these pre-loved items, Skagerup CEO Jasper Panduro says. Vintage, antiques and auctions for a new generation. Unsurprisingly, vintage and antique items were popular at this year's 3 days of design, with a focus on how a new generation of consumers are approaching antiques and auctions through a sustainable lens. So far, people have most often brought things to auctions because of the aesthetics, the history or the high quality of the age objects. But now we're seeing a whole new generation of customers for whom sustainability is a primary reason for bidding at auctions. Mette Rode Sundstrom, the CEO of Danish auction house Laritz.com says. Craftsmanship was acknowledged as a sustainable resource as it presents small-scale production as a local, traceable manufacturing and supply chains. Trend forecaster Vincent Gregor says Maison et Objet's sustainable focus, which protected origin labels, traceability and zero-kilometre production, are spilling over from the culinary world into design. We're in a period of transformation, says Unjib of Danish firm Spot Trends in business. We do still have large-scale production, but we need to change it to a more sustainable path. This trend was reflected in unique, skillfully made products that move far from the mainstream, such as the Les Inseparables vase by Audrey Cizek Ceramiques and Chamotte Stoneware, which you can see here on the left. These are in contrast to the futuristic interpretation of this trend at the Houzz textile preview, with ultraviolets and unnatural neon greens. At Maison and Unjib, this appeared as a resurgence of needlework and macrame, new delicate ways of working with wood, as seen here in the sculpture on the right by Maxime Parole, and in products, particularly by younger designers, with clear references to the visual arts. Trend forecaster Elizabeth Leriche, the curator of one of the themed areas at Maison Unjib, noticed the prevalence of motifs evoking 20th century visual arts approaches such as splatter, drip techniques, and freeforms. At Decorex, traditional crafts were used in new ways. Anika Reed, for example, exhibited wallpapers made with traditional woodblock printing. There are the comforts of home and togetherness. At 3 Days of Design, craft was also a part of a much broader movement to re-evaluate the rituals of home, particularly meals. Several dinnerware collections emphasise the meal as a setting for bringing people together. Maison Unjib, likewise, focused on the pleasures of being home. One feels well at home. The theme, to be home, already energised before the pandemic, resonates fully with our lives, Leriche says. At London Design Festival and Decorex, this trend was reflected in soft, curved and ultra-comfortable furniture, as you can see here on the screen. Biophilia, or the love of natural themes, is still going strong. Biophilia has been a big part of well-being in the home, and the trend is still massive. At Circe, it was seen as botanical patterns on tile. Decorex was likewise full of nature-inspired and organic designs, including a new line of wallpapers and fabrics from timber species. At Super Salone, plants were integrated into furniture, including in Stefano Borelli Artici's OC monoblock kitchen for Iran Cuisine. Biophilia was also part of the fair structure, with 200 trees planted around the venue. After the event, the trees will be replanted in the Parco Nord Milano as part of the Fostami Green Urban project. What is certain is that colour is back in a big way. This year's focus on colour can be broken down into 3 clear trends. Bold blocking. This involves bold colours that carry a tinge of nostalgia for the comforts of previous decades. Think juxtapositions and the colour blocking and contrasting tones that take us back to the 80s and 90s. These hues tend to cover burnt oranges, browns and moss greens from the 70s, along with the return of Klein blue. At Super Salone, there was also a darker, moodier blue used in contrasting palettes. It's an exciting and diverse time for design as there are no rules. Clients want to be more bold, Louise Wickstead of Sims Hilditch says. Look, we saw ultraviolets and unnatural neon greens accompanying the rising popularity of virtual consumption. Powerful pastels. The trend forecasters at the Houzz textile preview spoke, somewhat paradoxically, of powerful pastels, such as pistachio, peach and dusty sky blue. Also something seen at Salone and Maison Unjib. In Paris, pale pinks and mauves were a strong presence. And autumn bouquet. Finally, there were the earth tones, from the khakis and browns that were highlighted at the Houzz textile preview to what France Houzz editor Claire Tardy called an autumn bouquet of terracotta, burnt oranges and bold yellows, as well as moss greens. The Houzz textile preview emphasised khakis and organic neutrals, seen in dye-free fabrics. There's colour in bathrooms too. We've been seeing a trend towards colour in bathrooms for years now, but this year it was on hyperdrive. At both Circe and the London Design Festival, bathrooms were transformed into colourful spaces, and even wash basins forgoing white for more interesting tones. At London Design Festival, the emphasis was on warm tones, while at Circe many of these broader colour trends are reflected in tiles and fixtures. And that's all for today's session. I hope you found it useful. We have linked all the relevant articles in the description of this video, but if you have any questions at all, contact us via support on the Houzz Pro page. Thanks, and see you soon on Houzz Pro.